Project Veritas exposes educators once again for trying to teach queer sex to minors. And we have John Kirby of the White House discussing the Brittany Griner trade, as well as the Twitter files. All of that and more here on the Bald Brad Show. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. It is Monday, December 12th, and as always, support the show by hitting that like and subscribe button, as well as leaving your opinions in the comment section below regarding anything that we cover in today's episode. Your help and support would be greatly appreciated. And with that being said, our lead story of the day comes from Project Veritas, a video clip exposing a dean of students and bragging about bringing an LGBTQ plus health center to teach minors about queer sex. This is wild, you guys. It's not the first clip we've shown here on the Bald Brad Show from Project Veritas. Heck, we've actually been featured on Project Veritas before. For those that are new subscribers here on the Bald Brad Show, I'm an educator myself. I teach high school mathematics. I am not for any of this stuff. I just want to be really forthcoming that I am not even close for any of this stuff. I think it's wild. I think it's gross. I think it's disgusting. I think it's weird. I think it's awkward. I'm with all of you on this. I just want to go to work and teach math. I don't want to teach gender identity. I don't want to teach gender theory or talk to minors about sex or anything like that. It is so weird to me that there's people out there, these activist teachers, that think it's okay and are comfortable with this type of stuff, folks. It's wild. It's nuts. Let's go ahead and roll it.
I had our LGBTQ plus health center come in. They were passing around butt plugs and dildos to my students, talking about queer sex, using lube versus using spit.
Meet Joe Bruno, Dean of Students at the prestigious Francis W. Parker Private School in Chicago, which happens to charge $40,000 per student.
They're just passing around dildos, butt plugs. The kids are just playing with them. They're like, how does this butt plug work? How do we do, how does this work? That's a really cool part of my job.
Parents might be stunned to learn that Bruno's version of love and acceptance means handing out sex toys to underage students.
So I've been the dean for 4 years. During Pride, we do a Pride Week every year, and I had our LGBTQ plus health center come in. They were passing around butt plugs and dildos to my students, talking about queer sex, using lube versus using spit.
Who is this?
This is an LGBTQ plus health center came in to talk to my high school students.
Nice.
They're just passing around dildos, butt plugs. The kids are just playing with them. They're looking at them.
In the school?
In a classroom.
Wow.
Yeah. While I'm sitting there. And we had a drag queen come in, pass out cookies and brownies and do photos.
It's so amazing. And everybody's cool with that, the butt plugs and the dildos. Nobody complains.
No.
I mean, if the parents found out, would they?
No. It's queer sex. This is the drag queen that came in.
What's her name?
Alexis Bevels.
Alexis Devil.
And just hung out in my classroom.
And was there?
Or hung out in my office.
You have so much freedom. So much wiggle room.
So much freedom. So much money.
I mean, having Lube
to do stuff.
Trustees are okay with that too? They don't know.
They would. It's I wouldn't even run it by them. Why would I run it by them? They would be like, oh my God, that's wonderful.
Yeah. How old were the kids with the classroom?
14, 18. They're like, how does this butt plug work? How do we do, how does this work?
Right.
So yeah, that's a really cool part of my job is I don't have to worry about stuff like that.
You guys, this is so crazy for me to hear as an educator. It completely baffles me. I am not for it in the slightest. It is so disgusting. And they're just talking like it's nonchalant. Oh, it's not a big deal. No problem here. They're literally bragging about it. And it's not just this butt plug thing or dildo thing being shown to minors. There's literally a teacher in Baltimore here bragging about indoctrinating students with taxpayer money. Quote, put the taxes in the bag. So you want to see how these teachers handle this stuff, these activist teachers. Here's the article from Fox News. I just want to post this because the teacher that they talk about in this article is on TikTok here. And this is how the teacher reacted to Fox's article. Let's go ahead and roll it. They think it's funny. They actually think it's funny. They're antagonizing people. They're antagonizing parents for openly, supposedly indoctrinating them. Now, this teacher, I'm not sure what exactly they are teaching the children in the classroom, but with the Project Veritas thing, it's a little ridiculous. And knowing that there's people out there that are doing these types of things, as an educator, you would probably think that maybe you would hold off a bit on posting this stuff and talking about how proud you are for indoctrinating somebody's kids. It is so wild, you guys. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying, for the love of God, to wrap my head around it. Why, from educator to educator, would you think that's okay to do? I don't get it. I honest to God don't. This is a Spanish teacher. I teach mathematics. There's no realm for what's taking place now in math, Spanish, English, any of that stuff. It shouldn't be in the classroom regardless, but it is. So a Baltimore teacher in Maryland celebrated indoctrinating students while dancing in a post on TikTok, which I just showed you. Put the taxes in the bag, the teacher post on TikTok said, as a middle school Spanish teacher jovially danced. The teacher was responding to criticism of using a song in which she lip-synced F Up Your B in a video adorning her classroom in Pride materials. Fox News Digital identified the teacher, who works at Pine Grove Middle School in Baltimore County School District. You had somebody responding to a user who said, "None of this is what education is supposed to be about, reading, writing, arithmetic. Why are you so bleeping hellbent on indoctrinating your children?" As an educator, man, I'm right there with you. I don't know why they are doing this. And as far as I'm aware, there's no state standards that are applicable to what's being taught here as far as gender identity, gender indoctrination. I could be wrong, but how we're supposed to develop our lessons is we'll look at the Common Core standards and then apply and make sure students are meeting those standards. So if anybody that's watching this sees state standards from any of the 50 states, or at least the ones that use Common Core, leave me the link down below that tells all of us that they're supposed to be teaching this gender identity theory, indoctrination stuff to all the children. Because I don't know if it is or isn't. I don't believe it is. It's nuts. It's crazy. Parents aren't for it, but you still got these activist teachers trying to do it. She said, "I just got fired for indoctrinating my students. Psych," the next clip showed. "Still employed," she said, "but the tax is in the bag. Y'all will never take me alive," she added. The clip also featured a gif of money falling and an arrow pointing to it, which said, "Your taxes." Another person responded claiming that the profession is a patriarchal and white supremacist myth. It's crazy. This is nuts. You also have another teacher in a Texas middle school named Kelsey McCracken bragging about indoctrinating students on TikTok while interrogating each of her classes about whether they believed a non-binary identity made them uncomfortable. Republican Governor Greg Abbott responded to the story on McCracken, stating, "Our schools are for education, not indoctrination." That's not the way the left sees it, folks. And there's a reason why they're pumping out all these kids, and these kids don't know anything. They don't even know the Holocaust happened. They didn't even know freaking Pearl Harbor was just the other week. They don't know anything, but I'll tell you what, they know words like non-binary, microaggressions, transgender, all this stuff. Oh, they all know it. They all know it because they're being indoctrinating it without actually learning history, without learning math, English, all this other stuff. There's a reason why kids are coming out of high school reading at a 5th grade level. You wonder what class time is being spent on? Probably this stuff. I don't even have time to have a casual conversation with my students on a daily basis. How's your life going? How's work going? Because many of them work like in and out and stuff like that. You know, we're raising canes, whatever it may be. How's work going? How's your finances going? I ask about finances because I'm a personal finance teacher. So I have that with my students. I want to make sure their finances are going well. Are they budgeting correctly? You know, are they handling their checking account? All this stuff. So I ask about that. Where do they all have this time to do this stuff? Because I barely have time to teach and meet the standards I need to teach, let alone this craziness. So this is what they're doing in the classroom. You need to make sure you're aware of what your son or daughter is learning, because a lot of this stuff isn't being told to administrators, like having drag events after school hours or having these clubs that are off the books that your children may be exposed to, not even knowing what they're getting into. They just have a friend that wants to drag them to this. It's almost like a cult or a club, you know, sign off on it. I just want to reiterate, as an educator, I'm not for this stuff. There's a reason why we're on Project Veritas, because we're not for it. You have a conservative educator going, just teach the material. Stop doing this gross, weird stuff. Talking about butt plugs and bring dildos for kids to play with. Jesus. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments below, folks, because it's nuts. Moving into our next story of the day, we got John Kirby talking about Twitter, the Twitter files, which we've been covering here on the Ball Brad Show, as well as the Brittany Griner trade for Victor Boot. It's kind of a lengthy clip here, but I think Fox News does a great job in at least asking the questions. And what I believe is John Kirby lying about a few things. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Joining us now, Rear Admiral John Kirby, the coordinator for strategic communications at the National Security Council. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, Admiral.
Thank you, Shannon. Good to be with you this morning.
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, you had a conversation with my colleague Martha McCallum. It was in the context of Apple and what it's doing in China. You said this: we aren't in the business of telling private companies how to execute their initiatives. But it appears from these revelations from inside of Twitter, there were regular meetings between executives there, the FBI, DHS, the DNI. Flagging tweets, expressing their concerns, it seems trying to drive certain conversations. So should or shouldn't the federal government, federal agencies, in your words, be directing private companies on how to execute their initiatives?
We aren't directing private social media companies on how to manage their content. These are decisions that they have to make as appropriate.
I'm sorry, but that's a lie. Literally, we have proof that the FBI, DHS, and others meddled in not just the election, but other avenues of suppressing conservatives and their speech, telling Twitter what to do, what they think they should do. And then because Twitter is predominantly 97 to 99% ran by Democrats, at least that's where the funding's going, per their own data, this is BS. You have the FBI literally telling them what to do. But then you come out just weeks ago, oh, well, we wouldn't tell private companies what to do and what not to do. It's a lie. We have the receipts. It's an actual lie, but we'll let them continue.
Now, look, we obviously don't want to see, the public square polluted with hate speech and disinformation. That's not a good use of the information environment for the American people. But it's up to these social media companies to determine how they're going to manage their content, how they are going to deliver that content to their users.
But how much?
Don't you just love how they're going to dictate what's good for the American people and what isn't regarding speech? That sentence he just said, it just came out of his mouth like it was natural. Like, not a big deal. That's some Orwellian stuff. Oh, we're going to tell you what we think is best in the way to circumvent certain information to the American people. Hate speech, whatever the hell that means. It's still purely subjective. Disinformation. Before it was misinformation, then they were colluding the two, or mixing the two, misinformation, disinformation. It's all free speech, man. It's all free speech and should be allowed to be out there in the open. And also to go back to his first point of, oh, well, we don't tell private companies what to do. You literally have Jen Psaki on tape during a White House press briefing saying that they were actually telling Twitter and working with Twitter on suppressing certain speech. It's just like, it's unbelievable how they get away with this. And nobody's covering these Twitter files, really. It's really just Fox News and these conservative outlets. You don't see CNN and MSNBC doing all this crazy stuff, talking about what happened because they were ousted too, basically, because they all told us it was a bunch of lie, that we're conspiracy theorists. Now it's all exposed. Now, blank's hitting the fan, and now they're trying to cover up for it.
Pushback ability do they have if the federal government, an agency like the FBI, is calling them up and saying, we don't like these specific tweets and think you should take action, and then they do, it appears?
Well, without speaking to that hypothetical situation, again, these are private.
What hypothetical situation? It happened. So here we go again. It's not real. It's not real, you guys. Now without saying it's a conspiracy theory, it's now a conspiracy theory. It's all hypothetical. Elon literally has the evidence. He exposed it. It's not hypothetical at all. But this is the stuff they're going to peddle and push. It's make-believe, you guys. Don't worry about it. It's, everything you saw on Twitter, the Twitter files, the stuff we've covered on the Ball Brad Show, it's all fake. It's not real. Unbelievable.
The companies, and they have to make these decisions based on their own policies, their own initiatives, and we respect that.
Okay, let's talk about the big news this week between Victor Boot, the illegal arms merchant who was convicted of a number of things, was on a sentence here in the U.S., and he was traded for Brittany Griner. I think all Americans celebrate and have great relief that she is home, but there are questions about exactly what went down there. NBC initially had reporting that said,
No, we don't. I'm sure there's some relief on her end that she's back, but she broke the law. She pleaded guilty for it. I'm not saying that she should have gotten 9 years. That is not what I'm saying. But you did something you shouldn't have done. I understand it's a little vape pen, a little what, like CBD or marijuana, and I get it. I fully get it. But I don't see like people taking to the streets celebrating as if we just won the World War II. Like, this is great. Look at us. You gave away one of the most dangerous people in the world, which we'll see a clip of somebody saying that on tape here. Fox News, come on, lady. No. Celebrating.
The White House was given a choice between Paul Whelan, a U.S. Marine who's being held on espionage charges by Russia, and Brittany Griner, or no one. They said it was a misstatement. They corrected it later to say that it was either Brittany Griner or no one. Can you unequivocally say that there was never an option between Paul Whelan or Brittany Griner?
Yes, ma'am, I can. There was never a choice posed by the Russians, well, hey, you give us Boot back, and then you can decide whether you want Brittany or Paul. That was never the arrangement. It was only Miss Griner for Mr. Boot. They treat Paul differently, Shannon, because of these sham espionage charges. He is put in a special category by the Russians. And try as we might, and believe me, Shannon, we did. Right up until the very end, we were making efforts to try to get both of them out. There was just no way to get there. So it was either make this deal now and at least get one of them home and keep up the efforts to get Paul home, and that's where we are right now.
Here's the problem with lying. Just like he did with the Twitter files, the first part of this clip here. I don't believe you. And you know what? It's not an equal trade. I'm not saying there might even be an equal trade because, hell, we don't just throw Russians in prison for 9 years for having a little bit of marijuana in a vape pen. But, you know, we only hold honestly, the guys that commit some pretty heinous crimes here in prison, whereas the Russians, you know, you sit there and stub your toe the wrong way, walking up a curb, you know, they're going to throw you in prison in a gulag for 15 years. So I'm not saying there's going to be an equal trade, but, you know, you're only making an incentive for them to just take more celebrities, stash something on a celebrity's bag during a flight or on the conveyor belt, whatever it may be, and then, you know, they're going to get some more changes, you know, or at least trades there. But the fact that you lie at the onset doesn't make me believe that that was the only option. And, you know, if it was an option, maybe you go, hey, you know, I'm sorry, it's just no deal. No deal. Move on.
I want to ask about Mark Fogel because he's a U.S. teacher. He's taught in Russia for, I think, more than a decade, roughly a decade or so. He was taken into custody in August of last year, also coming through an airport there, had medical marijuana with him that was prescribed by a doctor because of injuries and surgeries that he's been through. He's been sentenced to 14 years. He obviously doesn't have the name recognition or the celebrity of a Brittany Griner, but he's been held on similar charges for longer than she has. Why wasn't he part of this conversation or this deal?
There's a limit in this particular case about what I can say publicly. I can tell you we're obviously mindful of this, of course, but there are some constraints here in terms of...
Oh, how convenient, folks. All of a sudden, there's some things I just can't tell you. You know, it's on lock and keep. It's behind closed doors. It's amazing how they bring this up and going, hey, basically their cases are the exact same. The guy got 14 years. Brittany Griner got 9. Really, the only difference is one's basically part of the LGBTQ community, a black person that hates America, continually pushes that aspect, and is a celebrity and a WNBA star, compared to the guy that's just a teacher. Hey, guys, well, you know, I don't know what to say here, so I just can't tell you anything. Convenient. Then they can't wonder why nobody believes them on their stories.
What we can say publicly, I can just broadly say that when it comes to wrongful detentions of Americans around the world, overseas, whether it's Russia or anywhere else, we're going to work as hard as we can to get them home.
Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat, had this to say. He chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The Russians and other regimes that take American citizens hostage cannot pretend that there is equivalence between the Brittany Griners of the world and people like Victor Boot, the so-called merchant of death. Nothing could be further from the truth, and we cannot ignore that releasing Boot back into the world is a deeply disturbing decision. Reaction out there from one of the former DEA regional directors who was part of putting him away found it astounding that he would be released. What kind of message does this send to our enemies, to bad actors out there who think if they've got an American, especially with any level of celebrity, they could get someone back like the, quote, merchant of death?
Sadly, this is a common tactic by Mr. Putin. We've seen this before. That's why the president has put in place additional accountability measures, visa restrictions, other sanctions that give us a little bit more influence and ability to affect the decision making of potential hostage takers. We've also included on the State Department website for every country you want to visit, there's now a new designation which will let you know what the detention risk is if you want to travel to to a certain country, whether it's for business or pleasure. So we urge Americans, if you're going to travel overseas, go look at that so you go fully informed. But know this, that even if you do everything right, and even if hostage takers are not dissuaded, that the United States government is going to do everything we can, if you're wrongfully detained overseas, to get you back home. And that might mean making some tough decisions, like the one the president just made. But in the end, the president believed it was the right thing to do to get to Brittany Griner back home. And of course, there's no equivalence. She wasn't guilty of anything. It was a sham trial to begin with. Mr. Boot obviously was guilty.
I'm sorry, but she was guilty of something. I mean, you literally said that she had marijuana on her, man, which went against whatever their laws were, and she pleaded guilty to it. So you can't say she wasn't guilty. She was, and that's why she pleaded guilty. She didn't plead not guilty. She pleaded guilty. So now he's there pushing a narrative, pushing a line. Again, this is typical from the White House, but we're supposed to believe our government. We're supposed to have trust in them, you guys. That's how it's all supposed to work here.
On very serious charges.
Well, including charges that he would sell to terrorists and other people that would freely go around and happily kill Americans. So you can imagine there's great deal of worry about him being released back out into the mainstream. We've seen what's happened with some of the people we've traded in deals that have ended up back on the battlefront and in places of leadership in terrorism organizations. Over on the House side, Guy Reschenthaler, the Republican, and the House says this: Biden and Secretary Blinken better preserve their documents because the new House majority, Republican majority, is going to demand answers on this latest disaster. So how will this administration answer the questions about why Mark Fogel and Paul Whelan were left behind?
We will, of course, cooperate fully with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle. If there's a need and a desire for more information, we'll be as forthcoming as we absolutely can be. Of course, we respect the role of Congress. A couple of points. Mr. Boot wasn't serving a life sentence, Shannon. He was going to get out in 2029. So at some point in the not-too-distant future, he would have been a free man. It is 6 years earlier. Nobody over at the White House is doing backflips of joy that he is walking the streets, but
So he would have been out in basically 6 to 7 years, and Brittany Griner would have been out in 9 years. So if you want to push this whole argument, it goes both ways. Well, he would have been out in 6 or 7 years. Well, you could say the same thing about Brittany Griner. Well, she would have been out in 9 years. Okay. I mean, she would have been out in 9 years, and probably went back to the WNBA or retired or did something. And he's gonna get out and go sell arms to our enemies again that are gonna kill Americans. Oh, perfect. Makes sense. No, you get it, John Kirby. You totally understand. It is an equal deal, equal trade. We really made off in a great deal. Because remember, according to Joe Biden, Brittany Griner was like the epitome of America, if you recall. If you haven't seen that episode, go check it out. She's the best America has to offer, according to Joe Biden and the Biden administration.
This was the deal we could get. Now was the moment we could get it. We're obviously going to look after our national security going forward, and Mr. Boot has choices to make. And if he chooses to get back into that line of work, then we're going to do everything we can to hold him properly accountable, as we have in the past. We did a national security assessment. We believe that whatever risk there is was manageable and okay to make this deal.
All right. Well, the world will be watching. Admiral, thank you very much.
Well, the world and I will be watching because it was a terrible deal. We'll see what happens here. We got a Marine that was discharged still over there. You got a teacher that basically did the same thing as her still over there. But look, we all know why they made this trade. She's a celebrity, a WNBA star, part of the trans LGBTQ plus elemental P alphabet soup community. She's also a black person, so skin color is taken into account. All this stuff. We know why it was there. They don't want to come out in the open. Obviously, they're not going to come out in the open and tell us why they did it. They're just going to say, well, that was the only trade option on the table. I wish Russia would just come out and be like, oh, this was the option, okay? They said we need her because she's part of the LGBT community and she, person of color and all this other stuff, right? I wish Vladimir Putin would just come out because it just piss everybody off. Not that I'd actually believe him. Who the hell know? Who can we believe anymore? We're not going to believe our own government. Not going to believe Putin either because he's crazy. But, I mean, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. As always, support us by hitting that like and subscribe button. And folks, I'll see you tomorrow here on The Bob Brad Show.